Tom Kunz had a typical childhood growing up in northern Utah.
Well, I grew up in Ogden, Utah, in North Ogden, actually out on 2nd Street, close to 2nd Street. My dad had a business down on 3rd and Washington Boulevard. I went to Hillcrest Elementary and then Highland Junior High School, and then went to Ben Lomond High School. Played football, played a little bit of basketball. Actually was on the wrestling team, but I hated that, and the coach wouldn't let me quit until after the first match. So I had a goal, and the goal was to get out there, get it done, and then so I could get out of it.
His parents were a great influence, and his father instilled in Tom a keen sense of business.
I've always been interested in business, and I guess because my dad was, I learned a huge amount from my dad and the business that he had. But one of the greatest things I think I learned from him, and as I was saying, the service stations had these huge amounts of blacktop, and so my job as a young kid was to wash that blacktop down, and it would take like a half a day. And I remember I got through, and I knew my dad was a clean freak, so I knew he was going to inspect this thing from top to bottom, and sure enough, I said, "Hey, I'm done, Dad." So he's out there looking, at the time, you remember you had those bells, that cords you run across and the bell ring, he'd check that out, and he said, "It looks pretty good." So he said, "Well, come with me." So he walked me out into the street, and he said, "Now turn around and tell me what you see." And I turned around, and I said, "Well, I see the dirt that I had washed into the gutter." And he goes, "Yeah." He said, "Your customer's going to drive in, and the first that you spent all this time cleaning that place up, but you didn't look at it from the customer's eyes."
He attended Weber State and remembers a business professor who taught him another important lesson.
If you have an issue or a problem, be it from a business perspective or a personal perspective, go out on the street, find just some average individuals and ask them what they would do given these circumstances. And then whatever they tell you to do exactly the opposite.
As an entrepreneur, he was always looking for the right business opportunity.
As I said, we had a number of these businesses, and I was sitting in this employment agency one day, and a friend of mine came in who was working for an office supply company, a machine supply company, and he had this, he called it a computer. It was a programmable calculator. The thing was about that big. And my dad and I had some apartment houses and stuff, and not a lot, but a few that we looked at. And he says, "Hey, I got a great thing for you. You need to look this." It was an investment analysis program. And so I played with this machine, and so I asked him, I said, "Hey, can I keep this over the weekend?" My idea was I was going to take this, buy one, and then go to the real estate companies and do analysis for them on, start up another little business on doing that for them. And what I found out over the weekend is 4 out of the 5 that I talked to wanted to buy the machine. So when I asked him, I said, "How many of these you sold?" He said, "Oh, in the last 18 months I've sold 2 or 3. And so that's how we started doing real estate computers. And then that got me to TRW, who was doing a national MLS system. That got me to Century 21, and it's kind of the rest of the story.
When he first started at Century 21, he set his sights high.
I went there in, I think it was the beginning of 1982, and the first week I was there, I put 5 goals out. Goals 2, 3, 4, and 5 had to do with the job that I had at the time. The number 1 goal I put down back in that very first week was I wanted to be president of the company.
He worked hard and eventually became one of the most successful franchise owners among all of Century 21's almost 9,000 offices worldwide.
Got a call one day. The president had left, and I was talking with their HR department, and the lady just happened to say, "Geez, what do you think about Van leaving?" I said, "Oh, heck, I could do his job and mine too." 15 minutes later, I got a call from the president and CEO of the brands. That was on a Wednesday. He wanted me out there on Friday. Friday afternoon when I walked out the door, he handed me the offer.
When he took the helm of Century 21, the real estate market was at its peak, and then in a matter of months, things changed dramatically, and Tom was faced with an entirely new set of challenges.
It's a lot different when you come into a company and the industry and the economy that you're working with is going the other way. And so you've got, I think you have to be on your toes more. You have to understand, what motivates people, and make sure that you've got the right tools and systems.
In addition to his many challenges of running a multi-billion-dollar company, Tom faced a personal challenge that nearly cost him his life.
2007, I had cancer, and I found the lump and went to the doctor, and when they did the first biopsy, they said it wasn't cancerous. And he said, but your lymph node is too big. So they went in and took a bigger sample and found out it was. And I was lucky because it was Hodgkin's, and it has a very high cure rate. But I remember sitting there the day he told us, and Donna, my wife, was with me. And she was, what a trooper. I couldn't have made it without her. So we went through that process, and I never slowed down a bit. I felt like heck the whole time. You can't imagine, when you go there and they're pumping this poison into you. But I just was never going to let that stuff beat me. And I got up every day at the same time. I went to work. I worked a full day. Came back, and and there were days when I didn't want to do it, but it was like, every day that I didn't do what I normally would do was a day that I lost and the cancer won, and I was never going to let that happen, never.
Having fully recovered, Tom's courageous battle has emboldened him to take an often unorthodox approach to leading his company in times of unprecedented change.
If you ask me what one of my best strengths was, I think my #1 strength is I've always, for some reason, been able to surround myself with great teams.
Tom is seen as a leader in the industry and is often seen on national television, providing insight into the real estate industry. He's also passionate about helping his favorite charity, the Easter Seals. Despite his role as a CEO in the highly competitive real estate industry, he has no reservations in sharing one of his key secrets to success.
If you don't have the right people on the bus, so to speak, you're not going to get there. And by that statement says that you can't do it by yourself. And I think that's the same way too. I mean, I think that I've been far more successful when I've had a partner, and I've got the greatest partner in the world right now with Donna.
For his distinguished career and commitment to serving others, Weber State University recognizes Tom Kunz, recipient of the 2009 Distinguished Alumni Award.